Welcome to In the Blue. I am your host, Dr. Cory Frogley, and of course, my co-host, Joseph Stith,
Hey,
my
Cory.
trusty sidekick. We've got a great topic and a very special guest today. In fact, this topic is one you're going to want to stay tuned to because the answers and the secrets we're going to give to you at the end of this presentation and the offering today is incredible. And the topic is about DSOs. And that acronym stands for Dental Service Organizations. Now, if you're a chiropractor or a physical therapist or a medical doctor, stay tuned because this is happening in your area as well. And it's a pretty hot topic because what we're seeing in the dental service or the dental community are these companies called dental service organizations. They're a management company. And what they're doing is they're buying dental clinics, or some of them starting, but most of them acquiring. And they're building multiple locations and then putting them underneath an umbrella with managed care. So ideally, some of them are segregated with different clinics providing different services. Some of them are seamless across the board, bringing in a brand, bringing in training to help each location improve, bringing in technology. As many of you know, BlueIQ is a great fit for this service because we're able to bring in the data from all of your locations, even if and I'm not trying to plug BlueIQ here, but just so that you understand this whole segment, it's to really be able to bring all of your data, even from different patient management systems or EHRs. Now, this is starting to happen in chiropractic, which is interesting. It's already happening in PT and physical therapy and audiology and optometry, and we're seeing this to be a trend. So we invited a very special guest, and Virginia Moore is a specialist in this area. She's coming to us from Redding, California today, and she has been working with helping how to start a DSO or taking your DSO that may be struggling and booming it. And she has become an expert in this because not only is she a master at the business side of how to organize the upper DSO, but how to connect the dots all the way down to the individual team member across the organization to bring that very special feel, special brand, special touch right to the patient. So Virginia, we are so grateful to have you with us today.
Thank you, Cory, and I'm so excited to be here. It's an interesting topic, and I'm excited for us to have a conversation about it.
Great to have you here, Virginia. Virginia
Thanks,
and I
Joseph.
go way back.
We do.
Yes, we've known each other for a while, but we were just talking about how in our history with dentistry, we remember when DSOs and the concept of group practices were kind of looming on the horizon, and everyone was afraid of what that meant, right? And even today, the subject is polarizing, as you said, if not paralyzing,
Yes.
For so many people, and often too divisive, when it really doesn't need to be that way. I remember thinking of DSOs as the monsters that were growing hair by the minute.
Right.
And now, clearly there have been some bad experiences that people have shared that may not have had the right emphasis in business that you and I appreciate and love, and together with Cory. Where the patient experience is enhanced as a result of that organization, rather than just impacting something we know and love so much as healthcare and dentistry, and diminishing the service just for money.
Right.
How would you speak to that, Virginia? Has that been your experience as well?
It is, and it takes me back to when as you said, early 2000s, it had been on the horizon, and I think it was that big, scary, a lot of negative connotations associated with DSOs. And so I thought to myself, I need to educate myself. I need to really see what's going on here, because I'll admit I was viewing it in a negative perspective.
Yeah.
And I remember actually when I signed up for my first DSO meeting, I thought, should I do this under an alias? Should I go incognito?
Just that dirty.
Yeah, I'm not posting this on Facebook, I can tell you. So I went, and it was a very interesting experience. There was, in attendance, there were CEOs, there were private equity people, attorneys, and there were solo practitioner dentists and groups of dentists who were looking at this. And that's where I really found my sweet spot, was with those doctors who were learning and looking and saying, what is this? What can I make of it? And how can I scale my practice or practices into something that meets with my why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Right.
So I had a very different perspective on it. And what I found was the biggest challenge in the building and growing is that, so many of these doctors would have one or two practices that were very successful. They were good culture, profitable. And so why not add to that? And what I see is pretty much an average is when they're at, let's say, 5 to 8 practices, that's where, if things aren't built correctly, the wheels start to fall off. And, you can't have those first 1 or 2 practices sustain 8 practices if 4 of them are not profitable.
Yes.
So we're seeing that a lot.
Yes. And that's where I come in the picture. That's the work that I really enjoy doing. I also, of course, work with sole practitioners, but when someone's looking and saying, I want to grow, that's where I'm helping them to say, how do you put systems in place? How do you develop a culture? How do you get rock solid on your why so that this is all scalable?
Interesting.
And, one of the, looking at why, which is very, very important. In fact, I think that's one of the first questions to answer when you're looking at this. Why do I want to do this? What does this mean to me? And I think of an example from the ocean cruise ship industry. And I just want to read this. 2 different cruise lines, and their why dictates the decisions they make. So the first is Viking Ocean Cruises. And their why is, we travel to explore, to learn, to understand. At Viking, we believe travel should be more than just a trip. It should be a doorway to cultural insight and personal enrichment. There's another why from another cruise line, and their why is fun for all for fun. And that's Carnival
guess
Cruise.
Who that is.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong. They're both fine. But what I love about it is they've got clarity. And so I'm going to guess, I've not been in the boardroom at Carnival Cruises, but I don't think they're in their boardroom saying, let's take down the climbing wall and make space for a library, because that's not part of their why. But on the other hand, at Viking Ocean Cruises, I'm sure in their boardroom, they're looking at how do we expand on cultural insights? Who can we bring in and speak to our passengers about the next port of call? So I use that as an example of a foundational piece of building a successful DSO is being absolutely clear on your why, because that dictates all the decisions that you make. And it sets up your culture. What is the culture that you want?
That's a good insight, Virginia, because I think the same applies to the dentist who is looking at a DSO as the answer for their future.
Yes.
If they're looking at retirement, if they're looking at reducing their stress and improving the quality of their life, because maybe they're not the best manager in the world because they listened to the consultants that they hired or should have, like you.
Right.
And their life is a mess. And yet copping out, it used to be, if you sell to a DSO, you're copping out and you're letting your peers down and you're just selling out, right?
Selling out, yes.
But it's all coming back to the why, doesn't it? Why would I do this?
Exactly. And I think that's the big question that's asked in the dental community. Why would you do that? Are you selling out? And the why that I see is, are you interested in building an asset? Are you interested in building a culture that really resonates with who you are and what you want to accomplish? Are you interested in economy of scale? And this is very exciting, which allows you to invest in technology that, with the number of people using the technology, you can, so to speak, wear it out before it becomes obsolete. You mentioned really life balance. Are you looking for the ability to take some time out to go to your child's, sports game? without feeling the pressure. So those are some of the beautiful items of gathering together, whether it be group practice or smaller DSO.
Yep.
And what I see also is being able to build a C-suite of managers, leaders that can support what you want to do. Because if you're not entrepreneurial minded, this is probably not the avenue that you want. But even with an entrepreneurial spirit, none of us are experts in everything.
Right.
So, bringing on, for instance, a CFO, because they have the expertise that you may not. But what they have to absolutely be clear on is, what is your why? That's
right, because without the right why, they can send you sideways so fast that you hate the thought of ever having gone down that road.
Absolutely.
Because you've lost everything that you held, dear.
Right.
I don't think a chiropractor or a dentist really went into this field because they wanted to be a great manager. I think that they assumed that management would be necessary. But they didn't go into it because they love managing. They just wanted to help people, right?
Right. And, I'm kind of smiling because I've been on the road the past 2 weeks, and smiling because in two of my client offices, it was like, are you two having conversations that I don't know about? But they both said about the same thing. And that was, I just want to do the dentistry. Both were having some personnel issues. And it's like, this is not what I signed up for. So when we look at this, it's the ability also, which I think is beautiful, is to focus on why you went into dentistry in the first place, which is to care for people and to apply your greatest skill, which is your clinical ability.
Let me jump in with a question there.
Go ahead. Sure.
If you don't mind, Virginia. Sorry to interrupt you on that thought, but that thought is, and I've talked to a lot of dentists who they want to stay focused on the dentistry and not have to get their fingers messy in the management, leadership, whatever we want to call it. But we've seen some DSOs come in, make this really appealing process, and we know all DSOs are not created equal.
Exactly.
So if you're a solo practitioner looking to be acquired by a DSO, and it's an exciting thought not to have to deal with a lot of that stuff. I've seen these guys go through, get really exciting some numbers, and everything looks like it's going to button up and go well, and then at the last minute, the deal falls through. So what advice can we give a solo practitioner or a single location? What due diligence should they be doing on a DSO, and what can they do in the beginning before it gets too deep to make sure this is a solid company that they potentially want to be a part of?
Right.
Great question.
It is a great question, and very important for consideration when you're looking at that situation. I think first and foremost is to find out, what is this company about? What is their expectation in the acquisition of your practice? So in other words, will you be able to be in the capacity of having all the administrative, including HR, taken off your hands and be allowed to practice dentistry? Are there criteria that you need to meet on a monthly basis that may not fit with how you practice or you're not comfortable with? So that due diligence is really kind of peeling back and looking at what's behind all this. And the numbers oftentimes can be very, giddy inducing. And, it's like, okay, put that aside for a moment, but look at this and say, does what this acquisition accomplish, will it be in harmony with my philosophy, my beliefs? Because like you said, as in anything, there's a huge range of what a DSO can look like.
So instead of taking things for granted, because that dollar sign looks so appealing, I want it to work, but we maybe look past the due diligence that we need to invest in.
We have some viewers that are chiming in, and one of the questions is, okay, so my why needs to align. How do I do the due diligence on the C-suite that you mentioned about the founding? How do they do their due diligence?
Well, I think in bringing on your C-suite, it's the hiring process, and part of that interviewing and seeking these people is, what are they looking to accomplish? If you're a doctor that wants to have a clear voice in this, in other words, you don't want to feel like you're just part of the works and your voice isn't being heard. That's important. Do you want a COO who is going to forward what your vision and your why is? So that's part of it. What experience have they had at this? Again, where do they want to end up in 5 to 7 years? Are they keyed into EBITDA as much as you should be in terms of, again, where do we want to be in 5 to 7 years? What do our numbers look like? Because that's another very important aspect. I think everyone that is involved in this is chasing the elusive multiplier, of 10 or 11. Yeah. And that's taking your EBITDA times that multiplier equals the price, the value of the practice. And so are the people that you're surrounding yourself with in a management and a leadership position on the same sheet of music? An example, if you bring on people in the C-suite positions that are looking at, we are going to increase our EBITDA so that when the multiplier is applied, we're all very happy people when the sale comes to pass. But we're going to increase EBITDA by some very rash means, meaning we're going to use lower quality materials and supplies. We're going to offshore our crown and bridge. So those types of things. If that's going on and you're okay with it, then you've got the right people. But if that's not what your vision is if you're not comfortable with that, then that won't work for you. And you're going to get down the road and be very miserable.
Great advice. Excellent. Have you seen a magic number of locations? So, whether you're starting your own or whether you're joining one, is it 5 locations, 7 locations? Where have you seen the tipping point to where people really start seeing enough profitability that, okay, this is worth it?
Right. It's a great question, and it's a tough one to come up with an exact number because there are so many variables, so many moving parts to that. Yeah. So if that acquisition or through de novo, you have 5 practices, if 4 of them are performing really well and maybe one isn't, but it can be absorbed by the other 4, then that's a great place. But I think the trouble comes in when we're looking at, do we have 5 or 7 practices that are all performing well? Then you're going to see some terrific results. So it really depends on what is the profitability, what is the EBITDA of the practices that you already have.
Excellent.
I saw a great, I worked with a doctor in the state of Texas that did a great job of 2 practices that were performing very, very well. And he did some terrific, with, of course, assistance from experts, some terrific work on scoping out a community that was definitely underserved, and did a de novo, started from scratch there. And that practice has actually become even more successful than the first 2. But again, what went on there is a lot of due diligence, working with people who know their stuff, so to speak. So he had very, very good guidance, now has 8 practices. And because, again, the principles that built and sustained the first 3 have been applied to the remaining, he's got some very scalable. So, he's looking to get up to 30 practices. And I believe that he will be very successful because what he's done in the first practices are scalable. They're replicable.
That's impressive. I want to thank our viewers today that have joined us. And again, don't hesitate to chime in with more questions. We'll keep Virginia here all day if we have to. But what are the biggest obstacles to scalability, Virginia, for these guys?
What I see the biggest obstacles are, first and foremost, culture. And that might sound kind of wimpy or soft, but if the culture isn't supporting your why, so then that comes back to the why. Don't want to beat a dead horse there, but that's very important. So culture, is the culture created and supported that will help you accomplish your objectives? And the other is, again, who you're bringing into your company. That's all personnel, from the C-suite to, the person who's helping with sterilization tray prep. So finding good talent. And that's one of the benefits of that economy of scale coming together. You often are able to offer better compensation and benefit packages that help to attract some of the top talent, coupled with a culture that's very inviting. And that's where I see, sometimes it's not even a compensation level. It's, I want to be a part of this environment that puts patient care first. And, that's one of the other things that I think is a myth, if you will, with DSOs, that patient excellent care must take a back seat to profitability, which is not true.
That's not true, is it?
No, it's not. And I had the opportunity to hear Pat Bauer, who is CEO of Heartland Dental, speak. And this has stayed with me for several years. He said, and not in a threatening or challenging way, but he said, at Heartland Dental, on a monthly basis, all of our doctors, all of our clinicians go through a clinical evaluation review. And what he said, again, without challenge or making it a defensive conversation, he said, how many solo practitioners do that? And I sat there and I thought, my goodness, how true. How many solo practitioners have someone objectively evaluating their care, their outcomes? And that was a very pivotal moment for me. I thought, wow, to create a culture. Yes.
I could see why.
Because it flies in the face of what a lot of the myth is that, patient care must be horrid.
Yeah, yeah. And that when we're just going to strip the practice of every extra nickel for the existence of a C-suite, and everyone has to pay for that, including the patients. But that isn't the truth. It really isn't true. No. I love your example of the Texas dentist, that because it was a group environment, they had the means of actually starting a practice in a new environment that was in need of dentistry that you couldn't have done out of school as a sole proprietor, right?
Right.
Without starving to death and going into debt that you may never recover from.
Yes.
If you're even successful, but because of the power of that network and the group practice that it is, those possibilities are happening.
Absolutely. And that's what's attractive to PE, private equity people. They're looking and saying, wow, you have a successful track record. You have shown us how this can be replicated to the same degree or same outcome. And that's very attractive because no one wants to invest in something that is iffy or, wow, you hit the jackpot with one practice, but can you do that again?
Yeah. Interesting. But it's not for everyone, is it? A DSO
Absolutely
isn't
not
for everyone.
Absolutely not.
And why not? Why not?
I'm kind of laughing, smiling here. It's absolutely not. I think if you're going to start on this path, or you're already on this path, it is not a cakewalk. It's a lot of hard work. And quite frankly, in my career of over 30 years of consulting and dentistry, having an entrepreneurial spirit is not necessarily every dentist's strong suit. And that entrepreneurial spirit is very important, to be able to go with the ebbs and flows, to be able to oftentimes put your ego aside and say, I really need help. I need to work with experts who are more familiar with this than I am. And to just be so open to learning and growing, and quite possibly doing things that looking at things from a different perspective that you may not have in the past. So that it's a great opportunity for those people who say, I really want to, I am entrepreneurial. I'm willing to take risks because there is risk, and with risk, there's reward. And done correctly, there can be tremendous reward. And that's okay, in my opinion, as long as it's done ethically.
And on the flip side, the dentist who doesn't want to be entrepreneurial, who just wants to focus on dentistry, but who's willing to invest in the leadership of a larger umbrella, then that feeds his why as well, if that's his why, correct?
Absolutely. I really believe there is room for all of these different models. I do not believe that the sole practitioner is going to be a dinosaur.
Right.
I think that is a beautiful model for many, many dentists. And the important thing is to make sure that you're engaged in your business of dentistry so you can continue to provide the finest quality of care. Because I've never seen a dentist be able to maintain great quality of care if they're not also profitable?
Yeah.
Then you're looking at cutting corners that are definitely going to impact that quality of care. So I'm a big supporter of, yes, if you want to be a solo practitioner, there's room for that, and enjoy it. But if you aspire to something different, what I'd like to have known is that you don't have to look at growing to, 700 practices. If you want to put together 6 or 10 practices and enjoy that, fantastic. And again, have it resonate with why.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that somebody in our audience today is a solo practitioner with that entrepreneurial spirit. They are thinking about taking that step of building whether it's a small or the long-term vision of a large DSO. What would be your number one best advice? What's the first step they should take if they're playing with that idea in their head?
Mm-hmm. The first step, other than why do you want to do this, is educating yourself. There are some really great meetings out there that support the opportunity to learn and to investigate and open doors to things that you may not be aware of. So I think first is educate yourself tremendously, and then start surrounding yourself with people that can help you along that path. In fact, I've got to say, I'm so honored. Avitas Dental out of Denver, Colorado has invited me to provide not only the curriculum, but the training for practice administrators and regional managers for DSOs. So, if thank you. If there is a solo practitioner out there who has an office manager, practice administrator, and together they want to, venture into this, what Avitas Dental is offering is a full curriculum. So we train that person up to really grow into practice acquisitions and understanding everything from how to read a profit and loss statement, and really partner with the doctor in the terms of, let's step into this together. So that's part of surrounding yourself with people who can help you grow and develop this in the way that you desire.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Well, as our time comes to a close, Virginia, it's sad to say, but we're going to move into a quick segment that's 3 minutes to know our special guest. So I'm going to throw some questions at you. I have not prepared Virginia for this, so
I was going to say, oh no,
you're going to answer these as quickly as you can.
Walks on a beach. No,
no, this goes along that board. So, first question, which is. Again, just us getting to know you better, but what is the most impactful book that you have read that's changed your life that you would recommend to our audience today?
That's a great question. And okay, I just have to say this. Aside from the Bible, okay. my next would be probably Patrick Lencioni's books. I really, he appeals to me. He speaks in such a way through his writing that it really supports, especially, of course, leadership. And I think that can be such a interesting topic for dentists. Does leadership mean I have to be speaking from, the tops of buildings and making these great pronouncements? And so I would have to say it's Patrick Lencioni's books, and they're engaging, easy reads, if you will, which is nice to get in there and look at leadership in a way that I could be a leader too.
Perfect. Next question. We know all great leaders start their days typically with a routine or something that is kind of sacred to them. Yes. Is there something that you do that you would mind sharing with the audience that you do it's just part of your ritual to get your head straight?
Yeah. I'm just full confession here. This was a bad habit that I had in starting my day. I would immediately look at my emails. And I have found that is not, for me, the most effective way. So I like to start it off with just some quiet time, prayer, meditation, focus on what I want to accomplish in the day. And that really helps me get myself centered and ready for the day. Excellent. And because I found that checking my email, starting down that path, the best word I could use, it would jumble my thoughts, and I didn't want that to start my day.
Yeah, fantastic. Favorite thing to drink?
Oh my goodness, coffee.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
A favorite brand?
Is it pronounced Ely or Illy? Illy, giving a plug to them.
Nice.
I've got to tell you, the Christmas before last, my husband and I say my husband and I, it was really me, treated ourselves to one of those super duper coffee machines, a Jura or Ura, and it's definitely fed my addiction. So
Beautiful. And last question, favorite place you have visited on vacation that you would highly recommend to our audience today?
Oh my goodness. That is such a tough question. I've had just really the opportunity and pleasure to travel now to 6 of the 7 continents. And so 2 of my favorite places are very, very different. One, which sounds crazy because there's no shopping or good restaurants, and it's Antarctica. We made an expedition to Antarctica, and it was phenomenal.
Wow.
Most pristine place on earth. Almost feels sacred. It's beautiful.
Cool.
And then I would have to say Italy. I mean, you can't beat the
history, the culture, the food.
The history, the culture, the language. I can just sit and listen to someone speak Italian. Happy as a clam.
Beautiful. Virginia, we can't thank you enough for being on our show today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Share with the audience today that Virginia has written an ebook. And this is a book that she is actually offering a free copy to all of our audience today. Will you just give us a quick cliff notes on your ebook, Virginia?
You bet. Being on site, boots on the ground in many different dental practices throughout the United States, I overhear conversations, and I would tend to overhear the same types of questions of patients, and I'm thinking, yikes, that's not going to get you the best outcome. So this book goes into about 7 different questions that are asked of patients that we don't want to ask, and what you want to say instead. So for instance, never ask a patient, do you want to pay? Do you want to schedule? Do you want x-rays? Because right out of the gate, you run a 50% chance of them saying no. So this book goes into what are those questions and what to ask instead for a better outcome.
Nice.
Beautiful. So you can see in our thing how to claim that and get that ebook from Virginia, and I highly recommend it. I've asked her to send me a copy. It's one of my favorite topics because it really does come down to individual relationship with our patients. And
Absolutely.
Again, Virginia, can't thank you enough. Joseph and I are grateful for you being on our show. We have lots of work to do here in the future. For our audience today, remember we are here in the Blue every Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern, and many more great, incredible guests coming onto our show. We are going to be working very closely with Virginia. In fact, she's coming back to our show in the near future, so stay tuned, because if you loved what she shared with us today, it just keeps getting better, and we keep getting a little deeper into the amazing mind of Virginia Moore. So thank you, Virginia.
Thank you so much. It's an honor. I appreciate it.
Great having you here. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Thank you to our audience. We will see you next Friday. Actually, not next Friday, in 2 weeks, because I'm speaking. Sorry, Joseph, I'm speaking, and so I won't. I'll be on stage that day, but we'll be back there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why we're both out of town speaking. So we will be back in 2 weeks. So be here, be square. Thank you so much.